We are recording now. Say something.
Check. Oh, I like it.
Oh, I like it. All right.
You're 2 and I'm 4. Okay.
No.
You're 1 and I'm 3.
Yes.
All right, welcome. Built by Vitality, episode 1. I've got... Take one. My name is Steve Pinkerton. I am sitting next to...
Philip Lewis.
Matt Lewis.
No. Matthew Lewis.
Matthew Lewis.
Yes, Matthew Lewis.
So in today's episode, what we are going to do is we are going to talk about the purpose of this podcast, why it took Philip so long to get us ready to launch, what we hope to get out of it, and kind of who it's for, or I guess what the target audience is. So it's more of a background, if you will, than it is. This serves a purpose of, we're not talking about leadership or management or anything like that. We're just going to try and tell you why we are certainly not qualified to have a podcast, but we have one anyway.
I'm pretty qualified to have one.
Yes, you'd be qualified on like the Nick Jr. channel. You would have a podcast on that.
It's still a podcast.
It's still, yeah. Okay, so first off, let's talk about our background. So my background is I grew up in northern Michigan. I went to a small college, and then after college, I joined the Marine Corps. I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, transitioned out of the Marines, and opened Vitality out of my garage with my wife, Jess. From there, it's been almost 11 years of this journey, and I've experienced pretty much every up and down that you can think of when it comes to business, personal business problems. And I think that's where this stems from is I don't think that I've got the answers, but I think I've made enough mistakes in enough different areas that I can find a way to help somebody out there at whatever stage they're at navigate through something that I probably did the hard way. And I think that's when you talk about what my purpose is to make someone else's life a little easier and to make you a better version, a more efficient version of what you are right now. So my background allows me to do that. And, I think you'll see along the way that if you can have a sense of humor and some humility, you can do just about anything. Because if I can have just a little bit of success in the business world, then I promise you anybody can do that. So that is in a 2-minute condensed version. That is how I got from Tawas, Michigan to Charlotte, North Carolina, and now on the Built by Vitality podcast. So, Philip, give me your version.
Mine's going to be way different.
Much longer.
No. Mine's going to be way shorter. Steve probably has some business failures and some advice on that. I don't have any of that. Mine's going to be more life failures and experiences. So, mine would start probably just when I got out of school. I went to or high school, I went to graphic design school at King's College, and I didn't want to sit behind a computer the rest of my life. So then next thing you know, I went to firefighter school. I thought I was going to be a fireman. So I got my firefighter 1.
I can see that, but I'm glad it didn't work out.
I didn't go through with that, obviously. So then I graduated from the police academy. And I had a few offers with the police academy, but I never did anything with it. Turns out I got my CDL, and I was the Budweiser man for 10 years.
When you talk about a fork in the road, that could be the fork in the road to rival all others. You're on track to be a police officer and decide, you know what, I can make way better money distributing beer, so I'm going to go this route. So that's a cool story.
Well, while I was at the beer company, I met a girl that worked there. Her name was Leah, and she did CrossFit, so that's how I got introduced to that. And I started over at CrossFit Northlake, and that's kind of how I met Steve over here at Vitality. And I just started playing around with video, editing, doing photos, and then put that together, and that's how I'm here now.
And I think that's, when we talk about why this took so long, I didn't have aspirations of creating this podcast and trying to have this social media presence. I really didn't. But I thought it was something I really did think that my experiences could help people. I had a bunch of fears, and that's really what the root cause of any kind of getting paralyzed by indecisiveness usually happens by fear. And the fear for me was, could I not deliver? Did I not have enough time to figure out how to do the podcast, how to upload the podcast, how to edit the podcast, how to do all the things that I think are really important to have somewhat of a successful platform? I didn't have that. So when I looked at January of this year, we hired Philip full-time to be a social media kind of just behind the scenes, kind of manage all the things I was doing really poorly with content for Vitality. So when that happened, it took me a while. Philip and I had been talking for years. He coached for me part-time, and he made it clear, like, man, if I ever had something that I had available, he would love a full-time position. And for me, I just didn't have I didn't think I had a need for the media side of this to hire a dedicated person. But January I did, and I immediately thought, man, this is kind of a cool deal. It opens up a lot of opportunity and possibilities for me. So we started, and then within 60 days, COVID hit, and then we went to a 2.5-month, 100% virtual online platform, and it just is funny how things work out, because
it's like I was your knight in shining armor.
I mean, you could say that. You were kind of like, I guess, Bane in The Dark Knight Rises.
That's
maybe.
Right.
But, Philip was then here, and he had so much ability to do the things that what we needed to do was in his wheelhouse. What if I would have had to do all of those? If I had to take the videos, edit the videos, it would have been such a train wreck. And that was really the springboard to when I got to see how much that freed up and what he was able to do and what he was able to create for us. I started to get all these different ideas in my head, and it's a dangerous place. When you get up in my head, it's a dangerous place to be. When I have any type of free time, I usually come up with bad ideas that someone needs to censor for me. And one of those was, man, let's create a studio. Let's create a media company, and let's do this. And so, again, my background, I'm fairly frugal. Any small business owner that isn't frugal, that doesn't, that doesn't really manage his expenses, I want to talk to you, because I don't think that they exist. Okay, I'm not talking about Jeff Bezos. I'm talking about small business. Yeah. So when I said, hey, Philip, let's just kind of, let's bootstrap this thing together. Let's create a little studio. I had a space for it, which we are in. If you're watching via YouTube, then you can see we're in the studio. I think it turned out really, really cool. But, Philip comes to me and says, well, we need some equipment. And I said, okay, what do we need? Like a $30 type of, what do we need? He said, we need this light. Well, the light was what?
$1,000.
I mean, something crazy. It was, this light better be able to make me lunch, whatever. Then we needed curtains, because we got to have curtains to cover the windows, because you can't have light coming in through.
And you can't see the curtains right now. They're behind the camera, but there's still a few gaps on each side of the curtain. We couldn't find one quite wide enough.
When this room was designed, it was not designed to have blackout curtains. It's 120 by 120. So you think about 120 tall by 120 wide. That is not your normal curtains. So we got specially made curtains. That was a disaster. We ordered some pictures. We had, so this thing took a little while to come together. What would you say? 3 months? 4 months?
Probably 3 months.
3 months. And that was, that goes back to, why did it take so long? Because I'm a stickler for trying to do things the right way right from the start, and I didn't want to just throw this thing together and be like, okay, well, the first couple episodes will probably suck. Well, they might suck anyway, but the audio won't be good. We won't have the right audio equipment. We won't have the right headsets. We'll just kind of talk into a lapel mic. I think when I listen to a podcast, at least give me some clear, crisp audio, and give me some good lighting and a good setting, and maybe I'll sit through someone like me running his mouth for 25 minutes. But that's kind of, that was something that took some time, and it was more money than I wanted to spend. So every time Philip walked into my office, he's like, hey, I think we need, and I'm like, what? What could we possibly need? I've given you a light. I've given you a recorder. What else do we need?
The recorder sounds great, but we couldn't hear each other on the recorder. So that was another little hiccup. So we had to get this little adapter if you were watching so we could hear each other during the podcast. If not, we'd have one ear hanging off on the headset so we could hear each other like we were DJs or something.
Yeah. So shout out to Stu Brower. He actually hooked us up with the setup for this and helped us kind of get this thing going. So if the podcast is terrible, you can actually shoot him a message and tell him that it's his fault. So if it's great, it's mine. It's because of me, not Philip.
Oh, that's good.
But I think now to transition, what are you going to get out of this? We're gonna do a little bit different. I think for me, 25 minutes makes sense to try and target a 25-minute time cap for these podcasts. The average commute is 25 minutes, and I think the majority of people, as busy as they are, I think they're going to be listening to them in their car, on the way to work or on the way home from work, because it's not very common for someone to get home from work and be like, okay, hey, I'll see you guys in a little bit. I'm going to go in the room and check out my podcast for a little bit. So I think
we got to drive while they're getting ready or on a lunch break or something like that.
So that's kind of the idea behind that. And one thing that I've listened to, obviously there's hundreds of podcasts. I've listened to a ton of them over the years, and I'll be in my car with my kids, and sometimes I'll have Rogan on, or I'll have Ben Greenfield or one of those guys. And you'll hear language, you hear the drop an F-bomb or something, and now I'm trying to explain to my 5-year-old in the back, like, oh, that's a bad word and we're not allowed to say that type of thing. So I think, we're going to try, we're going to talk about obviously all kinds of topics, but I think we're going to work to do it in a way and try and keep it as professional as possible. And believe me, here's the Marine Corps. I've got one of the worst mouths out there, but I think what I've learned in the 11 years of running Vitality is there's a time and a place for everything. And I think understanding the boundaries of when you have to be professional and when you can kind of let loose a little bit in in our kitchen in here with 8 guys, it would be a much different conversation and word selection, vocabulary selection than it would be.
Steve's gotten much better at that in the past 8 months with me being around. So I'm actually responsible for that.
If any time that I tell you that Philip has been a positive influence on one of my character traits, then we need to have a serious sit down and address that. So, I think we've talked about the short form of this. I think it's going to be that 25-minute sweet spot. I think we're going to address. Sometimes we'll have guests. I didn't want to make it a guest-only podcast, because I think then it becomes an issue of you run out of guests and you start bringing people on that you're just kind of trying to fill gaps. And I think that we can pick topics that I want to talk about. And I told Philip this morning, I come in the mornings and I'll train early by myself, and it's amazing. I can come up. I just start thinking about things and thinking about over the years what I struggled with and what I think would be helpful for people. And I can come up with things that we can discuss, just the two of us. And if those things kind of spark a thought to have someone on that makes sense, then absolutely we'll bring some people on. I've got some ideas for some guys that would be awesome guests for this. I just don't want to be a guest only podcast. And I think that'll make it. I think it'll make it very fun when we do bring in these guests, because it'll be kind of a little bit different. But I think we're just trying to. Our goal is, when we talk about who this is for, that's a tough question, because I asked Philip. I said, okay, well, who's our target audience? Yeah. And that's a challenge
It's
because
tough.
most times people have, they can say it's this group of people or this group of people. I honestly believe that our target audience is everybody, and I'm sure everybody says that, and we'll fall in that same rabbit hole. But I in my mind, I really do believe that, and I believe that because it doesn't matter whether you're a business owner, it doesn't matter if you work for somebody else, it doesn't matter if you are working for yourself. Even if you don't like fitness, this isn't going to be. Will there be some episodes that we talk about, why we don't snatch at Vitality? Sure, and that might be specifically for fitness guys or business owners in the fitness space. But I would argue that what that lesson that I learned and why I don't snatch, I would bring up how that could relate to any business owner in any space that decides what his target audience is and how to appeal to that target audience. I'm just using an analogy that uses fitness, but I think it can be applied to any business. So when you look at it that way, that's why I think it can be anybody. And then, I think the leadership stuff, I've been very fortunate to spend 8 years in the Marine Corps and to be mentored by some really, really incredible people. And everything I've learned, I wish I could say was, education based, and it was because I went to college and whatever. I honestly, everything I learned was growing up from my parents. It was the Marine Corps, and the whole other chunk was figuring it out myself. This whole business thing, no one taught me anything about balancing a checkbook or investing or managing relationships with banking institutions or how to draft up a lease agreement or how to
trial and error.
Yeah. And that's all it is. And when
YouTube, that's where I learned all my stuff.
And that's why Philip, I'm glad you said that, because one of the reasons that I think Philip and I work so well together is he's as passionate about the media stuff as I am about business and whatever else that I want to figure it out. I don't necessarily want somebody that has all the answers and has done this for years and years and years and years. I want someone like Philip who has a ton of experience but is hungry to get better and is hungry for that process, because that's what excites me. That's why this Vitality Media company that we created is something that I'm very excited about, because I don't know much about it, and it's given me an opportunity to kind of dive into something that I know nothing about and learn. And I see Philip, and we can I say, hey, it's no different than we get this new recorder and he's on there trying to figure out YouTube videos. And I would rather have someone that's passionate about something that only has 40 to 50% of kind of the overall knowledge, but is willing to search out the answers, because once he learns it that way, it's like teaching somebody to do a muscle up, right? Yep. If you have someone that is super athletic, super gifted, and he comes in, jumps up on the rings, and you're like, hey man, it's kind of like, you pull your chest and then you just kind of push your head through and do a dip. And in the next 10 seconds, he jumps up, pulls it, does a strict muscle up, and you're like, yeah, that's
you got it.
That's what it is. He's not gonna sure, he might respect the fact that he worked for that, but he's not gonna be as excited about the guy that had to lose 30 pounds, couldn't do a pull-up, and
barely could do a ring row or something, and then all of a sudden he's doing a muscle up.
And you spent 2 years, and they get that muscle up, and you see that look in their face, like it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because it's happened so many times where you see people that have put in so much effort to something, and then they become infatuated with that process. It's not about the result; it's about the process to get from point A to point B, and I think that's something that I've learned along this journey. Is I get so obsessed about a result. The reality is it's really about the process along the way and what I learned and what it taught me about myself, what it taught me about other people. And
it's like the media stuff. I don't think you'll ever perfect it. I'm always learning new stuff, but I know in the back of my head, as much as I don't want to believe it, I know in the back of my head I'll never learn it all or like perfect it. But I know as long as I keep playing with it, YouTubing it, researching it, reading about it, I'll always get better and better. But there's not really a limit to it.
Yeah, there's no ceiling. And I think if people are looking for perfection in anything, they're setting themselves up for failure. Now, I'm not saying you don't want to chase it. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to chase it, but we can't get frustrated about, I can't get frustrated that Philip doesn't know how to do everything. But I'll tell you this, what it taught me was what I thought I was mediocre at. I realized when I met Philip and he took over our social media presence, I realized that I wasn't even close to average or mediocre at my ability to do what he does. And I think that's one of the traps or the pitfalls that people fall into is we convince ourselves that we have this certain skill set. And just because I might have enjoyed it at times doing social media and posting Instagram stuff and trying to create videos, but that false sense of security of I know what I'm doing is a dangerous game to play, because what I realized when I hired Philip full time, he took over our social media accounts, and you got to actually see what a professional looks like. Wow, did it change my perception of what I was doing? And I wouldn't say I was embarrassed, but a part of me was like, it was embarrassing to me how wrong I was, that I truly thought that I was mediocre at this. Like I was like, yeah, I'm okay at this. I'm pretty average. But what happens is like, I was comparing myself to my dad. My dad has realized, I think, in his 60s now, how to log on to Instagram, but he doesn't know he can't navigate the platform.
Search, like he can get in there, he just can't do nothing.
Yeah, so when you compare yourself to that generation, of course, yeah, sure, I look very smart. But then when you look at the people that are in that space doing this for their primary business, you realize how far behind we were. So that was a really cool, again, it kind of opened my eyes up, and it keeps you from getting complacent. I think that's kind of the last thing that I'll touch on here for episode 1 is, I think surrounding yourself with people that don't allow you to get complacent is probably one of the more important pieces of advice that I could give someone. Is if you get complacent, the Marine Corps, we had all kinds of things about, we talked about it all the time. There was, I remember on the big Jersey barriers, we'd write complacency kills, and because that's when you got yourself in trouble, when you got comfortable in any situation, that's when bad things happen. And I think the same thing with just different circumstances, different consequences happen in business, to where, sure, I've been doing this 11 years. I could sit back and say, you know what, we got it figured out. We're going to be just fine. We'll cruise control. And I think that the fear of failing, to me, always has driven me to not get complacent. I'm always trying to figure out what else can I throw in the mix that maybe someone else isn't doing, or more oftentimes than not, I'll see somebody that is doing something really well, and I'm like, gosh, that's a great idea, and we'll copy it, we'll piggyback it in our own way. And I think you can do that. There's no unique anymore. No. Someone is out there doing it. So, you can't just say, well, I'm not going to do a podcast because somebody else is doing a podcast. Yeah. Yes. And they might be doing a really good job. And our podcast, it might not. Look, if we get 10 followers, we'll throw a party.
That's right.
We get 100, I'll buy Philip a grind. I don't know, but I don't know how this plays out.
There'll be a charge on my card randomly.
Yeah, I might buy it for him and charge it to his account, whatever. Or we'll charge to Andy.
Oh, okay, we can do that. I've done that a few times.
He might have to be a guest on here.
I don't think we should have Andy.
I don't know
here.
if we can do it.
No.
I don't know if the viewers are ready for it.
They're not ready for Andy.
Maybe our 100th episode will bring in Pastor Andy for some life lessons. But I think it just comes down to I hope that we can deliver some sort of positive impact to people. I hope that we can. There's stories of my experiences and failures. And yet, and look, I'm not going to tell you I failed in everything I did, but along the way, success.
I did. So it's a good mix here.
Well, see, that's a cool thing. You say that, but now look what's happened. Now you've got, I would say, a really good opportunity. I'm excited for Vitality Media. I'm excited for what this is going to offer, but I don't know if you would be the type of person you are, as hungry as you are, if you hadn't had those hiccups along the way. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't have. I wouldn't be here without the Marine Corps. I wouldn't be here without making a ton of mistakes. But those mistakes, it's okay. You just have to, there's, I don't know who I stole this from years ago, but, they said win or learn. And for some reason, that has stuck with me through all of this. And I've done a lot of learning, and some of that learning has helped me to win some things. And
I think if people know me, like in the gym or in my friends stuff, they'll be like, "Oh, Philip's really happy all the time. He's laughing, goofing around, whatever." But I think the backstory to that is I used to be really mad, had a lot of failures. I would be upset a lot. And now as I've gotten older, I'm like, there's not really a point. Just if something goes wrong, just fix it, figure it out. Yeah. So it's made me be that way now.
And that might be, a very close second episode coming. Is we're going to talk about managing our emotions. That is probably going to be the one lead into that I think is the most important aspect of business and life in general. And that's what Philip's talking about is, man, you can only control so much, and the things that are out of your control. I've got 10 stories of my almost teenage daughter that is not in control of her emotions, and we can do a whole podcast on her, and she'll probably never talk to me again. That's the downside of I've got 2 kids. I've got a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, girls, of course, because God has a sense of humor. And I love them to death, but I am not built for the emotional roller coaster that comes along with 12-year-old daughters. I'm just not built that way. You are built perfect for it.
I don't think so.
If you look at the soft, sensitive, emotional Phil, that's him. But that's not me. I don't have
any kids, so that's God, because He knows that I'm not made for that. He blessed you with that because He knows you can handle it.
I don't know. Look, I'm going to handle it, but that's a whole nother can of worms. And I'm just telling you, I went from 8 years in the Marine Corps where we were in an all-male unit, and it was a very type A, lots of testosterone, lots of testing each other, and you made decisions and you never looked back. And now here I am,
wife and 2 daughters,
on a nightly basis. I am negotiating with a 6-year-old terrorist about how she needs to eat the last 3 bites of her potatoes before she can have her ice cream. And it's I don't know how I got to that spot. Everything fast forwarded. I lost all my authority, and now I'm just getting worked by 2 kids. So anyway, that's
gonna be good.
There's definitely some
maybe that's the second podcast.
maybe we lead into that one.
Okay.
So yes, I hope that we can make you smile. I hope that you look forward to hearing from us. We're gonna post these podcasts on a weekly basis, and I give you my word, no matter if we have 2 followers or 2 million followers, I will stick with this for 6 months. I think that is the one thing you look at, and you see these podcasts that'll start and they got all this momentum, and they last for 2 months until life gets in the way, and then they just disappear. That is not, I want to be consistent with this. I want to give it a chance. This forces me outside of my comfort zone. I don't enjoy being in front of a camera. I really don't.
Me, obviously, I'm always behind it or at the computer, so this is different.
So it definitely takes us out of our comfort zone, but I think like anything, I think that's where we have the most growth, is where we're where we have the most discomfort. It's no different than we tell people in the gym. If Philip hates deadlifting, then guess what? He's got to deadlift more. If we hate being in front of the camera, maybe we'll get better. Maybe we'll just get to the point where we're decent at it. And in 6 months, if the feedback is, hey, you guys have a terrible podcast and nobody wants to listen to us, then we'll pack it in, but we'll learn something. And
I really don't think that's going to happen.
You don't think it's going to happen?
I don't think that's going to happen.
And that's why I have him. He's the optimist, okay? Yep. But again, that's 100% transparency. That's one of my fears. My fear is you start something that you could potentially not be that good at, and people don't find value in it, and it kind of wastes your time. And I think for me, the time factor over the years is the one constant that continues to get smaller and smaller for me. And so I've got to be very protective over that, because I just don't, I'm split between so many different ways. And we can talk about managing schedules, and that's down the road. But again, we hope you'll enjoy it. I know that Philip and I are excited to get this thing going. I hope you like the studio. If you guys would, the viewers, if you would comment on the studio.
If you're just listening, we're lit up pretty nicely with that light you purchased.
Yeah.
Also,
for $1,000, you could look this good too.
And also, our backlight is a little stick light that you can change any color you want.
Which
currently
was
it's blue.
And that was $300. So
it's worth it. Check us out on YouTube if you're just listening.
I actually talked to Philip. I said, why couldn't I put a headlamp on Spencer and just have him sit in the corner and shine us on there?
He talked about duct taping flashlights to the wall and stuff in here.
He's
frugal.
I'm frugal. And now, we don't have time for this, but there's frugal and there's cheap. I'm glad you said frugal.
You're frugal.
I'm frugal.
Because I know the difference. You're not cheap.
Yeah.
You're
I'm
frugal.
just frugal.
You're smart with his money.
I'm a responsible
Yep.
spender.
I say, hey, Steve, we got this light, this $300. I think this would work best. He gets on Amazon. He's like, well, there's one I found that's $12.99. It looks kind of comparable. Check it out. Let me know what you think.
But would you say
it was only one color and it lasts for 6 minutes?
But it was the right blue. Would you say that I was agreeable? Like I listened to your
He was very
plea.
open, and then we ended up getting a $300 one, and it looks great.
So 11 years ago, Steve, that version of me wouldn't have went that well.
No.
Philip would have went off the balcony. We wouldn't have. The podcast wouldn't have started. Like we're not spending $1,000 on a light.
We'd be doing this podcast video in his truck or something.
Plugged in a cigarette lighter.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So hey, we are over our 26-minute limit. So now your commute is gone. You're sitting in the parking lot waiting for us to finish because you're hanging on every word. I apologize for that. We will get better with our time. I hope you enjoy episode 1. Please reach out to us. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have topics you want us to talk about. Any interaction, we'll answer the questions. We'll maybe that'll be one of our segments as we take questions that we get. And like Andy Stump, I love that the Cleared Hot podcast. He's amazing. He does 5 Bullet Friday or shoot. He hates me. I just said it wrong. Son of a gun.
I'd like to know, how does Steve's voice sound in case I need to adjust anything? I know mine sounds good.
Full Auto Friday. That's what it is.
There we
Sorry,
go.
Andy.
Bulletproof Friday. Yeah, bulletproof shoulders. That's what you were thinking. That's another topic.
Yeah. But yes, my voice is way better than Philip's, so you can kind of comment on how I sound on this amazing rig we got set up that I chose. So, all right, that is it. Enjoy your day, and we will be talking to you guys very soon. Take care.
All right, see you.